Good evening. My name is Ms. Ramada, and today I'm going to be teaching you about Ivan Pavlov and behavioral and social learning. Ivan Pavlov, Behavioral and Social Learning, presented by Emily Ramada. Ivan Pavlov, 1849 to 1936. The principles of classical conditioning, Pavlovian conditioning, were created by Russian physiologist Ivan Pavlov. Pavlov exhibited his theory, experimental psychology, and psychopathology of animals at the 14th Medical Congress in Madrid, Spain. The following year, his discovery of conditioned responses earned him a Nobel Prize in 1904. His principles of conditioned responses became very familiar to educators who started to apply his methods in the classroom. Humans are very well equipped to learn as we are able to adapt to changes in our environment. Pavlov, though, experimented his conditioning theories on dogs.
Behavioral psychologists have come up with new views, not only of animal behavior, but of human nature as well. And these views all concern a process that we take for granted, learning, because we are all truly born to learn. Ironically, one of the most important figures in the study of learning, Ivan Pavlov, wasn't concerned with the subject at all, at least not at first. Pavlov, a noted Russian scientist, won the Nobel Prize for Physiology and Medicine in 1904. As this original footage shows, Pavlov was initially interested in digestion and the action of the salivary glands. By diverting the saliva of dogs into test tubes, he could precisely measure if and how much they salivated during digestion. When food was presented, the dogs salivated quickly, an inherited salivary reflex. But over repeated testings, a strange thing happened. The dogs salivated before contact with the food. Just the sight of the food was enough to stimulate their drooling. Then, just seeing the food dish, or even hearing the footsteps of Pavlov or his assistants, was enough to trigger this built-in reflex. What was going on to elicit this response? Pavlov decided to find out by systematically varying the stimuli and measuring the dog's reaction. Metronomes, lights, and bells were all used as stimuli, and they all worked as stand-ins for the food. What mattered was not the kind of stimulus that was used, but the fact that it reliably signaled that food was on the way. Pavlov had discovered a fundamental type of learning called classical conditioning. An original stimulus elicits an automatic, unlearned response. Both stimulus and response happen naturally. They are unconditioned. Then a second, neutral stimulus that never elicits the unconditioned response by itself is introduced just before the presentation of the original stimulus. If the neutral or signaling stimulus is presented alone, and a response occurs as if the original stimulus were still there, we say that conditioning has taken place. The arbitrary neutral stimulus becomes a conditioned stimulus. The reverse is also true. Pavlov and others studied the extinction over time of such conditioned responses. When the subject learns that the conditioned stimulus no longer signals a desired event, the acquisition process is reversed. as the learned connection is gradually weakened. Pavlov's work and the work of those who followed him led to a remarkable conclusion, and that is any stimulus an organism can perceive is capable of eliciting any reaction the organism is capable of making. This means that virtually any sound, sight, or smell can influence the way our muscles tense or relax, our moods fluctuate, or even the way our attitudes are formed. For instance, if I say, relax, and then do this, you're going to be startled and upset. After 5 or 6 pairings of relax, just saying the word relax is going to generate a negative response rather than its usual learned reaction.
Ivan Pavlov and his dogs. Like most scientific discoveries, classic conditioning was found by mistake. Pavlov was actually examining how much saliva dogs produce while being fed. Slowly, he began to realize that the dogs began to salivate even before they saw the food or the dish. His dogs were carefully monitored using all sorts of devices, including revolving drum for recording responses, a tube for collection of saliva, and a container of meat powder to stimulate them. The dogs began to associate Pavlov's lab assistant with food. They would salivate even when the assistant approached without food or a bowl. This behavior has been learned through association. Classic conditioning is the type of learning that occurs when events take place close together in time and thereby acquire similar meaning. Neutral stimulus. A noise that will elicit a response of interest or attention, but nothing else. For example, ringing a bell.
Good evening. My name is Ms. Ramada, and today I'm going to be teaching you about Ivan Pavlov and behavioral and social learning.
Elicit salivation, such as the smell of good food. The salivating is the unconditioned response.
Conditioned stimulus and conditioned response. By ringing a bell before serving a dog its food, the dog will come to expect the food with a sound. After doing this several times, the sound of the bell will cause the dog to salivate. The bell combined with the food is the conditioned stimulus. The dog salivating at the sound of the bell is the conditioned response. Classical conditioning combined with behavioral and social learning. When a specific symbol is paired with an image or emotional reaction, that symbol takes on a new meaning. During early development, positive and negative emotional reactions are conditioned to people, objects, and environments.
Reactions to certain foods, objects, or environments might be the result of conditioned neutral stimuli that has persisted through a noise that will elicit a
Conditioning in the classroom. Associating a sound or movement to an action can make classroom management run smoothly. For example, if a kindergarten class is getting a little unruly, you might want to say, "Mac and cheese!" And they'll respond with, "Everybody freeze." How do you incorporate Pavlovian conditioning in your behavioral management? Please comment below.